everyone, it's Miriam with a Y. I'm going to use the new technique that I call reverse painting with a stencil today and give the finished piece a bit of a 3D look. So stick around and watch how it's done. For a more detailed step-by-step explanation of this technique, make sure to watch this video linked here at the top and also linked in the description box below if you haven't already. For this project, we'll need alcohol inks, whatever brand you like. I'll use PIñATA, already thinned with some isopropyl alcohol in needle tip bottles. Some GRAFIX opaque white craft plastic as my substrate. I really recommend that because it can clean back down to the white. A stencil with fairly large openings. Isopropyl alcohol, at least 91% so that you can really clean off a lot of the alcohol ink, which we'll do later on. Masking fluid, again, whatever brand you like. Something to apply the masking fluid. My hands down favorite tool is a ruling pen. And here at the top is a link for a video telling you why I love the ruling pen and how it works. A thin paintbrush or micro brushes. We'll need a pencil, ideally with a soft lead, like a 6B pencil or higher even. They're easier to blend. A blending stump or tortillon. That's a fancy name for a blending tool. You might also want a black fine liner and maybe a fine white paint pen. And a hairdryer and Lazy Susan can also be handy if you have them. Okay, let's do this. My first step for this is going to be to make what I call a base painting. This time around, I won't do it with an airbrush like in the previous video. I'll just use a hairdryer on low heat. You might also benefit from using a paintbrush now and then to apply ink here and there. My goal for this is a busy, colorful piece. Now, it doesn't have to be busy with color if you prefer something more monotone, for example. But for this technique, you do want it to be busy enough with alcohol ink border lines like this, so that each stencil section ends up having some interest in it, and none of them end up being plain, even, solid colors. I think the borders really make this technique sing. Like I said, I'm after a very colorful piece, and I also want my colors all over the place, like a bunch of confetti. In other words, I don't want all my blue in one area, like just on the left, and all my yellow on the right side. I think a good mix will suit me better for what I'm after. I started by getting some swaths of color down because I want my colors to stay on the rainbow spectrum. I want to avoid making grays or browns. In order to do that, I need to be careful what colors I allow to touch. For example, no yellow touching purple or pink touching green, as much as I possibly can, because that will automatically create browns and some grays. As much as possible, I'm also trying to blend colors here and there to create some extra colors, like other variations of purple or some oranges or turquoises. Again, that's just because I'm after color. You might prefer to create variations of brown and rust and gold, or very subtle colors in a mostly monotone piece. That can all work beautifully too. At first, my blobs of color are big and plain, but I will eventually break them up and give them more little inner blobs and therefore borders, because remember, borders are good for this. Maybe pull out your stencil now and then to see what size blobs are best to give each stencil section decent interest. You'll see me periodically breaking up overly dark patches or thick border lines. That's mostly to keep things balanced as much as possible, you know, so that no one spot pops out too much. Like, I don't need anything to be highlighted. I want everything to be kind of even overall. After a while, I get what I want. Now, don't make yourself too crazy with this step. Remember, you're not after a beautiful painting here. You're just after interesting borders, maybe some fun color transitions, really just lots of little blobs. That's pretty much all you gotta make. Lots of little blobs, all different shapes, colors, sizes, and then you're done. And now that I'm happy with the blobs that I've made, on to the stencil. Yay! For this piece, I've chosen a circle template or stencil because many of you may already have one, and because circles are fun and easy. I'm going to be starting with some larger circles first. And what I do is move the template around and look for the areas that look the best in the largest circle that I'll be using. Now for me, I love it when I can have both lots of line or border interest and as much color variety within each circle as possible. So like I would avoid an all green circle or even one with two very similar colors if I can avoid it. But, you know, that's my aesthetic. You might have your reasons for doing the exact opposite. Or if you have like a monochromatic piece, you might be driven by other factors. Either way, if you do something with varying sized shapes like I'm going to be doing here, choose the spots for your bigger shapes first for the most part, and then fill in the rest with smaller shapes. That way you get the best selection up front. So I will finish that up. Okay, now that I know what I want to protect, I've put some masking fluid into my little silicone cup. I've got my trusty ruling pen set to allow a comfortable flow of the fluid as I draw, and I've got a piece of paper on which to rest my hand when necessary. Dunking the tip of the pen into the cup allows some fluid to be held in between the blades of the pen, ready for drawing or filling in the circles in this case. Now, if you have a needle tip applicator for your masking fluid, that can work too, but the ruling pen is just significantly easier. It's allowing me to spread a coat as precisely as I want. And I gotta say, drawing circles would be harder with lots of other tools. And okay, why, oh why did I make so many circles? What was I thinking? Now, while you're spreading your mask, you may find it hard to tell if you've missed a spot. So every now and then, tilt your head down and look for the shine, you know, like the wet puddle, to be evenly over the area in question. Make sure there isn't any break in the little puddles. If in doubt, let an area dry and then add a little more where you think you missed some. When it comes to masking fluid, more is more. It is better to have too much than not enough. Once I think I'm done, I tilt my piece now every which way so that I really can get the light to kind of reflect off the shiny dried masking fluid to make sure I've gotten everything covered. The lumpy bits that you see are areas where I added more on top just to be sure. And then when I am sure, I let all the masking fluid dry completely. That can take a good 20 minutes, depending on how thick some areas were. It'll be worth the wait. Be patient. Now we're ready to wash away our background. For that, I'll use 99% isopropyl alcohol. 91% works well too. I'm just squeezing out some drops and letting them drip down the piece. As those drops run down the piece, they'll take unprotected ink down with them. And I'll just do that until I'm happy with the pattern in the background. And personally, I like a marble-like look, but you can wash all the background away if you want. That's the beauty of the graphics paper. It can clean back down to the white. And you can, like I said, you can leave it white if you wash all the ink away, or you can, once you've washed away the ink, replace it with a whole other color or a bunch of colors. As long as you don't disturb the mask, you can experiment to your heart's content. The mask is dried rubber. Alcohol or inks will not penetrate it, so play until you're happy. Then, once you are, let everything dry again. Fully, totally, unmistakably bone dry. Okay? If your ink is still a little, even a little damp when you start rubbing off your mask, yeah, not good. And then, when everything is totally dry, you can have this fun, rubbing off the mask. This is ridiculously satisfying, I think. It's easy to do and just plain fun. I love seeing the bright, pretty colors reemerge out from under their drab blankets of masking fluid. This is when you really see the fruits of your labor and you see all that patient masking pay off. Yeah, I love this every single time. Now, I think this is super pretty, but we're going to give it a bit of a 3D edge now. So first, I want to decide which end is going to be up. And I've gone with this direction. And the next goal is to make these circles appear to be like discs floating above the background. This is where our soft lead pencil comes in. Again, softer is just easier to blend, but a regular number 2 pencil can work too. Since I've decided that what is now the right border, like when you're looking at the video here, will be the top of my piece, and that my light source will also be at the top, I need to create a shadow under every circle, but only under half of each circle. The half that I want to be the bottom of each circle. So with my pencil, I'm just drawing a fairly thick arc of gray under each of these circles. I've tilted my piece in this direction because it's just easier for me to draw those arcs. As I progress, I taper the ends of the shadow toward the circle so that they don't just end abruptly, and that would be unconvincing also. So the shadow will be thickest at the bottom and thinnest at the two ends. I think that already you can see the 3D effect beginning. So what I'm going to do is leave some circles on the far right of the piece undone. Like I'm not going to give them shadows or anything, so that you can really see the difference from doing this or not doing this. We could leave the pencil marks as they are, but they can look even better if we soften them. And for that, the best tools are blending stumps or tortillons. Now, most of the time when you buy a pack of these, you get a selection of both of them, of both types. So there are blending stumps, which are compressed paper fibers, and these are double-ended, or tortillons, which are tightly rolled paper, and these are hollow and just have one end. Either of these will work really well. And for those of you that doodle, if you shade your doodles, these are ideal for blending that too. So they work beautifully on real paper as well. So this step is just simply softening any harsh lines. I'm literally blending them into the background a little for a softer shadow. Now, if you want a really soft shadow, what you can do is rub some pencil on a different piece of paper, then rub your blending stump through that, and only use your blending stump to draw in the shadow. Like, don't actually draw with a pencil on your drawing. Just use a blending stump that has some graphite on it, and then you'll get a super soft shadow. And how dark or light you make your shadow is entirely up to you. I'm sort of exaggerating everything in this piece just so that you can really see everything well. For some extra oomph, giving these a highlight can be fun too. It can give them the appearance of being like shiny or bubbly, you know, or like glass-like. And for this step, I'm using a white paint pen and drawing some tapering, segmented lines toward the top of each circle. Since the imaginary light source for this piece is at the top, that's where the brightest highlight would be on any object, at the top. Now, you can draw one continuous line across the top, but I think this is a bit more special. Plus, we already did the solid line thing in the last video, so I thought I'd switch it up a little bit for this one. Now, if you're curious, this is how a continuous line could look. And in this piece, I also used a black fine liner to emphasize the edge of the shadow below each circle also. Okay, so here is the piece all done, with some before circles for the easy comparison on the far right, where I haven't done anything. Tell me in the comments which way you prefer this, with shadows and highlights or without. Now, for those of you who've watched until the end, I've got a quick little bonus for you. Remember this stencil that I showed you at the very beginning of the video when I was listing the materials that we would need for this project? And the little sample piece that I'd used to kind of compare a full color piece to a monochromatic piece? Well, here is a section of that stencil being used on that little sample piece. and I'll let it come to life by washing away the background. And this time I am going to wash away the entire background so that you can see what that looks like. Okay, the inner part of the shell seemed, I don't know, kind of off to me being all white. So I kind of felt inspired to do something about that, to give it a little bit of inner shell color. So I'm just using some pinks and purple and blending them in there. The mask is still on the shell, by the way, which is why I can do what I'm doing right now. Now, once that's dry, I could definitely clean up the spillover ink with a tissue and some alcohol. But, you know, since I'm in a masking fluid frenzy, I might as well just mask this area because, you know, the masking fluid's still here on my table. So I'm just going to cover that area up because why the heck not? And then I will clean up the excess ink once the masking fluid is dry, of course. Remember that. Now, while I finish this up, tell me in the comments what you thought of everything and give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed the project. My final touch for this simple image is to use a gray fine liner along the bottom and left of each section of this stenciled image, just for a little extra definition, but a subtle one, which is why I went with gray and not black. Now, I think this would make a wonderful cover for a card or framed for a simple pop of color in a beach-themed room, maybe. I don't know. I think there are lots of fun things that you could do with this. I hope that this video has given you lots of fun ideas and that you'll let your creative nature shine now. Maybe use a combination of some of the things you saw in the video or blend it with some things you already do. And if you are willing to share what you make, I would love to see it if you stop by my Facebook group and kind of join in the fun and let us see what you make. Thank you so much for spending time with me. May the inks be kind. Stay safe. See you soon. Bye now.